Okay, so we're going to look at prepositions and commands in English today. Now, these maybe are two words that you've never heard of before, or you don't know what they mean, but they're actually quite easy, and you use these words and hear these words basically every day. So we'll start with prepositions. Prepositions are just a type of word in English, just like verbs or nouns or adjectives. A preposition is a type of word. Now there's lots of types of prepositions, but the ones we're looking at today are prepositions of place. Again, this might sound quite confusing, but all they are words that tell you where something is compared to something else. So it's easier if we look at some examples. So here, if you look on the left, you'll see a ball and some boxes. So basically, prepositions are words like behind, in front of, next to, above, between, on, in. So these are just words that tell you where the ball is compared to the box. So the ball is behind the box, the ball is in front of the box. The ball is next to the box or between the boxes. So that's all prepositions of place are. On the right, you can see some more examples. So if you look there at the dog, at the bone, the dog is behind the postman, or the dog is in front of the man. So next to, close to, near, okay? So they're actually quite easy words, they just have a difficult name. So if you look back at the recipe you wrote yesterday, you might see there's some prepositions like in or on that you've used already. For example, put the onions in the pan, or put the sauce on the chicken, or put the sauce over the chicken. So these are examples of prepositions that you may have already used. If you look at this picture, try and think of some sentences using prepositions that you could make. For example, the ball is under the desk. The clock is on the wall. So try and think of some prepositions that you can make using that picture and write down. You can pause the video and write down 5 or 6 prepositions or sentences using prepositions that you can see in the picture. If you're still not quite sure about prepositions, you can obviously email me and ask, but they're quite simple once you know what to look for. So now we'll move on to commands. Commands are similar to instructions. It's just telling someone to do something or not to do something. So I'm sure you hear commands or instructions every day from your parents, from teachers at school. For example, sit down, open your books, close the door, be careful, don't eat with your mouth open, don't answer the phone. These are all commands telling you to do something or not to do something, instructions. When you're using commands, either speaking or in your writing, you don't need to use the word you. So instead of saying, you need to close the door, you can just say, close the door. Or, you need to copy the questions now. You could change to, copy the questions. Or, you don't need to say, now you add the salt to the water. You can just say, add the salt, or add the salt to the water. Instead of saying, you cut the potatoes into small pieces, you can just use the command, cut the potatoes into pieces. So to start a command, you would just use the verb, the action. For example, copy, or add, or cut, or put the carrots in the pot. So again, if you look at the recipe you wrote, you probably have used lots of commands in the recipe. So when you're writing recipes or instructions, you often use just command words, commands. If you're still unsure about what prepositions and commands are, you can look them up on YouTube yourself and do some research. Or you can obviously email me and ask anything as well. And we can also talk about them on our next Skype call. The last thing you're going to do on the online questions that you have for today, the last thing you're going to do is quite difficult. If you look at this picture, it's a picture of an experiment, like a science experiment. I want you to look carefully at the picture. You can ask your mum or dad or whoever is in the house for some help. But look at the picture of this experiment. And the first thing I want you to do is think about, what do you think they're trying to do in this experiment? What is the purpose of this experiment? So there's a bowl on the table. There's a glass in the bowl. There's some salt water in the bowl. Then there's some wrap, like plastic wrap, that you wrap food in on top of the bowl. And there is a small pebble, like a stone, on top of the plastic wrap. You can also see the sun coming in, so maybe it's a hot day, so that might give you a clue. So think about what they're trying to do in this experiment first, and then you can answer the questions online. So, if you've got any questions, feel free to email me, and just do your best. Good job.